background, and that might help make it the feedback a little bit quieter, and then hit *6 to unmute yourself. I think that might be better than me muting everybody, because I want you to feel free to be able to ask a question if you want, or if you want to save them till the end. So if everybody could just hit *6. That would be great. Thanks. So the reason I started working more and more with wellness, as I was just saying, was that I got sick. And I'm going to talk a little bit about this as we go through this, but I know that it affects a few of you that are actually on the call. So I was someone who suffered with thyroid condition. I was very hyperthyroid and missed the diagnosis that my doctor gave me because I thought she was just sort of saying something to me to make me feel better, because I was getting married and I was having panic attacks and I didn't understand why. So she kind of said that I was borderline, and it was, well, sorry, I just want to make sure everybody can. Gloria, can you hear me? I'm getting a message that somebody can't hear me. Sorry about that. So as I started to begin my journey on getting healthier, it really did start with me paying attention to my body. The thyroid condition for me got worse before it got better, because I was a patient and kind of went off my medication and didn't work on helping myself. There's a lot of feedback.
The background sound.
All right, I'm going to mute everybody. I think, hold on. Okay, so I just muted everybody. So I think some of you are realizing that you can type in the chat area. So if for some reason you can't hear me or something like that, or have a question, even let me know, because I can access the chat area. But I think this is much better. So sorry, I wanted to hopefully have people be able to, be live and part of it, but obviously the echoing is worse. Okay, so, and Gloria, I'm not quite sure why you can't hear, except that I would suggest you dial in with a phone and look at it on a computer, but I need to keep moving. So I'll talk a little bit more about my health in a minute, but in the long story short was I ended up having Graves' disease, which I know a few of you on the call had Hashimoto's. My eye was really full-blown by the time I kind of came back around to my endocrinologist. I actually went off the medicine for a couple of years because I thought I was fine. This was pre-internet, before you could research and see that thyroid disease lasts forever. And I ended up having radioactive iodine, and then 6 months of prednisone, and then radiation to try to reduce the eye swelling that I had. My doctor was very aggressive, but she did help. But she left me feeling, after the radiation and everything, really drained, really unhealthy, and I was trying to get pregnant following that. So I started working with a friend of mine who's a nutritionist, and she really sort of got me healthy through a variety of different nutrients and diet and lifestyle. And actually this weight management program was a big component to it, because I hadn't really connected the dots so much between the foods that I was eating and their impact for me in general for my health, and then specifically for me as someone who suffered from autoimmune conditions, which Graves', like Hashimoto's, is as well. So just sort of talking a little bit about what people's health goals are. I find that people fall into these kind of 6 categories. Most people want to have good energy. They want to feel sharp, that their brain is smart and whatever their age is. They want to feel spiritually and emotionally grounded in some way. Sometimes that comes from family. Sometimes that comes from your own meditation or personal place that you go to kind of get yourself feeling grounded. I think in general we want to feel lean and strong and have a healthy weight and feel active. And while some people's goals may be to, be a size 2 in a bathing suit, what I want to be is this woman here, who's my friend Valerie, who's 65 and jumping and feeling healthy and feeling good amidst a bunch of 48-year-old people. And I think that's the big testament. I think most of us are not necessarily feeling the need to be in a bikini on the beach, but most of us want to be able to lower our medicines, be around for our grandchildren, feel good, have energy, and have clarity. The reality is that in the United States, we've got a lot of bad facts about where people are and how healthy and or not healthy they are. And the reality is that considering we're a country that spends trillions on dieting, 66% of us are overweight, 95% are deficient in basic vitamins and minerals. Over 90% are pH imbalanced, and what that means is that we're more acidic than we are alkaline, and when you're more acidic, you have more inflammation in your body. When you have more inflammation in your body, you're at higher risk of generating any of the degenerative diseases that are out there: arthritis, cancer, diabetes, fibromyalgia, lupus, anything like that. But you also hold on to weight when you're inflamed. And I don't just mean inflamed like you're big with weight, but inside, when you have too much inflammation, your metabolism won't work well either. 8.3% are diabetic, and that number is rising, and it's quite frightening how it's growing in children. 35% are pre-diabetic, and that number is rising. 4 of the 5 top killers are man-made diseases that are largely preventable: heart disease, diabetes, prostate and breast cancer, and obesity. Now, obviously not everything is preventable, but people weren't dying from heart disease, in the 1800s. These are generally man-made diseases from our diet and from our lifestyle. And a lot of this stuff, especially the diabetes, type 2 diabetes that is, can be reversed with diet and lifestyle. And diabetes is a big precursor for heart disease. So again, really helpful for us to be aware of the impact that food has on that. We all know we're a fast food nation in so many ways. I mean, it's been exciting to me to see the movies like Super Size Me, give and shed some light onto fast food. But we, we'll look at stuff later, but many of us know, that the fast food is not really food. You're buying a system. You're not buying the healthiest way to make foods. And even some of the fast food things out there like Panera, which have healthier alternatives, when you actually break down their labels, it's thousands of milligrams in sodium, lots of grams in fat. There's always healthier options, but it does seem like as a consumer we have to search really hard to get the information. And in general, as a society, we don't support healthy eating habits. We're supporting getting it quick, getting it done. Even just as a lifestyle, as a mom, juggling between activities, it's very hard, to feed our kids healthy foods in between. So in general, how do we live our lives? Well, I think most of us live our lives like this guy in the cartoon. The doctor's trying to tell him, an aspirin a day will help prevent a heart attack only if you have it for lunch instead of the cheeseburger. Most of us just want the quick fix, quick pill to fix our problems. But the reality is when diet is wrong, we don't need medicine. And when diet is correct, when diet is wrong, medicine's not really going to help us. And when diet is correct, medicine is of no need. There's another great philosophy, which is that we're all building the blocks right now for different kinds of diseases. We're all setting, the pieces of the puzzle. People don't all of a sudden get diabetes, or some different kinds of conditions. Generally, there have been, food choices, diet choices, lifestyle choices that have been planted, all along before we get diagnosed. Many of us also live like this, right? Like I take the aspirin for the headache caused by the Zyrtec. I take for the hay fever. I get from the Rienza for the uneasy stomach from the Ritalin. You get the idea. And I do all this for my high cholesterol because exercise, a good diet, and in this case, regular chiropractic care are just too much trouble. So it's actually, I think most of us are looking for the quick fix, but we know that as a world, we've become, pharmacological. Doctors are promoting a lot of different medicines, and they have a place in our life. But for most of us, too many of our doctors are not looking from the inside out. There's a great book called Clean Gut by Dr. Alejandro Younger, and he talks about connecting us like the way we are with plants. When you have a plant that's dying, you don't just cut off the leaves. You have to looking at the fertilizer, at the soil. You have to start from the bottom. So same with us, looking at our gut. Can't just take pills necessarily to fix all of our problems. We have to try to heal a little bit from the inside out. We also suffer from a lot of modern day problems. We don't look like cavemen anymore, but really nobody told our bodies. Our bodies have always been built to store fat. That's genetically how we are, but everywhere we go, we have high caloric food, and evolution has not caught up with that fast food. We're not just eating game meats, like hunter-gatherers. We're now eating so much processed food and so much just commercial food that our bodies are not able to manage it and process it. If you look back on cavemen versus the modern day diet, caveman times we had hundreds of different kinds of fruits and veggies. We were eating more than 100 grams of fiber a day. Now we get maybe 20 grams of fiber per day. Everything we have now is refined sugars and sweeteners and grains versus having low sugar and lots of legumes and berries and game meats. Everything we have now has more what we call omega-6s in them, a lot of meat in the dairy, which is a higher, fattier, more inflamed form of an omega. We need more omega-3s, which are anti-inflammatory, which help us with heart health. We are so low in vitamin D. That's sort of a big issue now for a lot of doctors that are testing, knowing that people are low in vitamin D, and vitamin D is active in all the receptors in your body, and it's essential for cell function. So we have basically more of everything that's bad and less of everything that's good. And what these problems are doing are they're leading to all these different degenerative diseases, like I was saying before, that people were not suffering from in the 1800s. Diabetes, heart disease, depression, headaches, arthritis, asthma, allergies, cancer, weight gain, sleep, aches and pains, fatigue, GI issues, you know, your whole stomach tract, immune deficiency. All of these things can be helped in some way by paying attention to your diet and your lifestyle. So one of the other issues besides modern day problems is the food industry in general. And for some of this may be, you know, stuff that you already know because you're already a consumer who's reading and paying attention to this. But I do find sometimes for people, they're just not aware. But the RDA, or the recommended daily allowance, was never designed to create the ideal diet, okay? It was just always about base nutrients. It was never about optimal health. So it was about how to prevent scurvy, not necessarily how to thrive and live well. So if you ate 100% of every label, you'd think you'd be healthy, but you wouldn't. So for example, the RDA for vitamin C is just 60 milligrams, but actually in reality, you need 100 to 250 milligrams twice a day because vitamin C, you can overdose on it, so you want to take it in multiple doses throughout the day, and just to cure scurvy. And for diabetics, they need 1,250 milligrams just to reduce the protein that's in their urine. So the RDA has become pretty much antiquated, and I know they're looking at changing some of that, and in general, the food pyramid and the labeling structure as a whole is looking to get changed, which is important because right now, they're allowed to be legally up to 20% off, which is incredible to me. So we think, you know, okay, now we, like in the classes that those of us that are teaching TLS, we teach a label reading class. And what's so fascinating about the label reading is that so many people really don't know how to read labels. And even when you do know, you still can't be sure that they're accurate. So there's been quite a few studies that have proven this. So ABC News conducted lab tests on over a dozen products, which the FDA does not do that often. All 12 of them were over in at least one nutrient. They called out that 3 of them were over by more than 20%. Ritz crackers had 36% more sodium. Wonder Bread had 70, which I can't believe people are still eating, but 70% more total fat. David's sunflower seeds, the basis of my baseball playing son, had 23% more saturated fat. And then here's the scary thing. So many of us are in the know that you don't want to have trans fats and saturated fats and hydrogenated oils and all of that. But on the label, if it says 0 trans fats, that doesn't necessarily mean that's 0. It means there's less than 0.5 grams. But if you have multiple servings in a package, so let's say you have 4 servings in a package, now all of a sudden you have 2 grams of trans fat. So you have to really pay attention to that. In July of 2013, PepsiCo was cited for their naked fruit juices that were not natural. They had synthetic fibers and GMOs in them. So, not to mention, if you go back and look at any of those labels, there's, you know, 25, 30 grams, if not more, of sugar. In Good Morning America did a whole thing on food fraud where they were looking at different extra virgin olive oils that weren't even extra virgin olive oils. They were combinations of canola and other oils. And they did a whole thing on paprika where it wasn't even paprika. It was just a carcinogenic dye that turned the herb red to look like paprika, which is really kind of frightening to me. So these are all pretty recent. So while you could certainly drive yourself crazy to think like everything I'm eating is not real, it does become important for you to start to pay a little bit of attention. And that's sort of what I feel like I'm always encouraging my clients to do, is just be a little bit more aware today than they were yesterday. So when you're looking at the labels, you want to make sure you're making sure the protein is as high a number as you can get, that the fiber number is as high as you can get. Just looking even at learning how to read a net carb count. So, if your carb count says 25 grams, you want to pay attention to what is the product. Is the product, a wrapped sandwich, in which case the carb might be full of different kinds of chemicals, or is it a carb because it's full of vegetables, in which case they're good nutrients. So you want to try and keep your net carb count, let's say for a wrap or a piece of bread or something like that, or cereal, low. You want to have that in single digits if you can. And to figure that out, you're going to take the carb number and the things that don't impact your blood sugar, like fiber, you subtract that, and sugar alcohols also don't impact your blood sugar level, and that will help you determine what the net carb count is, because you're trying to figure out how much of the carb is going to impact my blood sugar level. And the things we'll talk about in a second that impact your blood sugar level are sugar. Another issue with the food industry, and this is kind of the scariest thing to me, is farming. And I know so many of us know this, and we all kind of battle in our brains and our pockets how we can afford organic and not organic, and do we need organic. But the reality is this is a picture of, where cattle are raised. I don't see any grass. So for those of you that may have food sensitivities, which we'll talk about in a minute, but let's say you have a food sensitivity to gluten, you want to make sure you're having grass-fed cattle, and you want to ensure that that is that way, because if you're having grain-fed cattle, then you're still eating grains, So if you're someone who has celiac, you're still going to have an issue with it. The challenge with the food industry is the cycle and the circle of food, and this is the part that I can never get unskeeved out about this. But companies are trying to make as much money as they can, so they're using every piece of everything that's possible. So without going into like crazy details, you have a cattle, it's cut into prime parts, like when you go to the grocery store and you see the different, sections of the animal that you're buying, the loin, or you're buying the fillet, or you're buying, ground meat, whatever you're buying. The leftover scraps get ground up, they create feed, the chickens get fed the feed, the poops get recycled by making filler. The industry takes the waste and grounds it up to make poultry litter, and they feed it back to the cattle. So now the cattle is eating the chicken litter. It's just a cycle that goes around and around. I never think everybody has to have everything organic, but I do think if you, let's say you eat nothing that's organic, maybe cutting in half and saying, okay, every other time I buy eggs, I'm going to buy organic. Every other time I buy beef or chicken, I'm going to buy organic or farm-raised. Just at least to cut the amount of chemicals in half. Because here's some of the issue between grain-fed and grass-fed. It's all what benefits the companies. So grain-fed speeds growth, and it lowers the costs, which is good for the industry but bad for us. It enhances something called fat marbling, and fat marbling means that there's more fat, a richer taste, which means we buy more, higher profits, higher in calories, lower in omega-3 fats. As I said before, that's the anti-inflammatory, which is what we want. Lower in conjugated linoleic acid. That's a great amino acid that helps us break down belly fat, something that's very important. It comes from safflower oil as well. Antioxidants, it's lower in vitamins A and E and beta-carotene. And more importantly, it compromises our digestive tract by creating a breeding ground there for different microbes that require antibiotics. The challenge here is finding the balance somewhere in your budget between doing everything one way and none of it. So that's why I do try to make the suggestion for people at least to try to, if you're never doing it, just to incorporate some of it into your diet. There's another book that I like called Skinny Bitch, which is, I know, a funny name. And if you are at all offended by curse words, then it is not a book that I recommend, because the authors curse a lot in it. But it's written by a woman named Rory Friedman, F-R-E-E-D-M-A-N. And what I like about the book is that they're talking about all different kinds of issues that are going on in the food industry. So they talk about carbs, and they're talking about sugar, and they're talking about coffee and dairy and grains. And it's a fun read, it's a quick read, but it's an informative read. So I definitely recommend that. Another way that the food industry has become broken is with wheat. So many people now we know are having food sensitivities or feeling like they have celiac or they're feeling really bloated from the gluten. And I do food, which we'll talk about in a second, but food sensitivity testing, and I see more and more people having issues not being able to break down gluten. And the best thing that I can say to you about this is that it's not your fault. It's not the gluten we grew up in. It's not the gluten that you're going to get in Europe. It's what our companies are making now, the genetically modified to be cost effective. So there's three major differences in them. They have a super starch, which is super fattening, makes everything fluffy. So if you think about the food that can, the breads that can sit on your counter for days and days and days, weeks upon weeks, and never, get hard, that would be the super starch. So 2 slices raises your blood sugar more than 2 tablespoons of sugar. It also has a new gluten, a super gluten, which increases inflammation. So it's 2 times as many chromosomes, means a larger amount and a variety of gluten proteins. So gluten is just one protein, but there's a whole mess of them. And this is when they invented basically like the Frankenwheat, the guy who won the Nobel Peace Prize, because you could feed more, because you could get more gluten, more proteins off of one head of wheat and create more. So this is where this all began. It also has in it now a super drug called opiate, which is the gliadin protein, which causes an addictive response and stimulates your appetite. So if you ever wonder why you want more and more carbs, it's a drug. Sugar is craving sugar. And when we teach our program, one of the best things that we do is get people to wean off of gluten. And just about everybody, including myself, the first time I did the program, says no way. And I know I said no way because I don't think up until the time I started teaching and taking this class, I had never gone a meal without, I think about it now, and it's hysterical. Like nothing didn't have a carb. Every meal I ever had, I think, had pasta. I hadn't really even had fish until I was 29. But it was a bread, a bialy, a bagel, cereal. Everything had some kind of carb in it. And it was amazing to me the change in how I felt and how you don't crave it in the same way once you remove it. Because as I said before, sugar craves sugar. So speaking of sugar, this really is the hidden problem. So even just taking a look at this, think of what we feed our kids, ourselves, about how much sugar is in each thing that we're drinking, let alone eating. All of this sugar, when we're eating foods, food comes to us for our bodies to break it down and gets broken into glucose. Our body, so the pancreas, creates insulin to connect with the glucose and carry it so that it can be used as energy in our body. But the more we eat things that spike our blood sugar level, the more and more insulin gets pumped out, the insulin gets watered down and is not carrying the glucose throughout our body, and the glucose starts getting deposited and stored in our body as fat. So that's why too much sugar, too much insulin is going to start to create fat storage. It's going to increase our sugar cravings. So again, sugar craves sugar. It's going to increase our bad cholesterol and decrease our good cholesterol. It does everything bad. It makes our blood sticky, which can cause high blood pressure, heart attacks, and strokes. It increases something we call oxidative stress, which I'll talk about in a second. But oxidative stress is what becomes precursors for almost every degenerative disease and inflammation. And for a lot of people, creates what we call carb sensitivity and metabolic syndrome, where our cells become so insensitive to insulin because the demand is high. So I always give the analogy of if you went on a blind date and the doorbell rang and you looked out the window and you went, oh, that person's not very good looking, I don't want to go out with them, you don't answer the door. So going back to the insulin story, if every time you eat something, like I have a bagel, now bagel has really no fiber in it, so you've got, water and flour basically that gets broken down to a paste and just spikes your blood sugar. Fiber is going to help balance your blood sugar and slow down how you eat the sugar. So if your insulin keeps getting pumped down and watered down, at some point the glucose says, oh, you're nasty looking insulin. I don't want to walk, through the body with you. I'm just going to park myself right here. So we want to make sure we have good quality insulin, and that comes from not overburdening it. Other issues with inflammation are a little bit of what I was talking about before with the plant and the soil. When our gut is inflamed, we are at a higher risk for every autoimmune disease, lupus, type 1 diabetes, rheumatoid arthritis, heart disease, cancer, depression, joint and muscle pain, skin acne. All these issues can come from not having your gut in the best place. okay? So often when we work with our clients, we're looking at healing their gut first, which is why when we do the weight management program, we often start with a detox week, because we want to clean out the gut and the liver and the colon and get all the bad crap out of you so we can now put new good nutrients. And the testimonials are staggeringly in the positive. I don't think I've really ever had a bad testimony for detox, other than if you ask somebody like 2 minutes before they started, in which case they think it's going to be the hardest week ever. But the first couple of days, maybe the first 3 days at best, are the most challenging. But when you get on the other side of that, your skin feels better, your energy is better, joint pain for a lot of people starts to go away, and that becomes the key to sort of self-healing yourself just by changing the food that you're eating. And I know it seems so hard, but with structure and working with someone who's going to guide you with the foods, it's going to be easier than you think. The other things that can cause inflammation is that they can be caused by food intolerances and sensitivities. So not just talking about being allergic to food where you vomit or have anaphylactic shock or something, but many of us are actually walking around with low-lying food sensitivities, which can cause nausea and bloating, and acid reflux is one of the basic things, backaches, constipation, skin issues, like I was saying before, weight gain, headaches, and fatigue. These are all very clear symptoms from food issues. So when you're working with a coach, journaling your food intake will become important, because you want to start connecting the dots between the foods you're eating and how you feel. And I think most of us go a long time never doing that. For years, I just thought I was supposed to feel as crappy as I did all the time. It never occurred to me that it was I didn't want it to occur to me either, I will say, that it was the foods that I was eating. But more and more of my clients are finding more and more foods that they can't handle anymore. So what is a food sensitivity? So a food sensitivity is an intolerance. It can be called or a sensitivity. Those two words are interchangeable. But it's basically like a low-grade food allergy that causes, like I was just saying before, these unpleasant reactions. The challenge is that they can often go undetected and can take up to 72 hours before you have a reaction. So if you ate something for dinner tonight, maybe you won't feel great, in 3 days, but you'll feel good tonight, so you don't necessarily think it's that. And the problem is that our exposure is frequent because we eat all day, and often we eat the same things over and over again. One of the biggest things that I learned in the last, I guess, almost 4 years now is the difference between slow and fast allergies. So this was a big testament to my kids, unfortunately. So my kids have a whole host of food and airborne allergies. I have an older son who, as I've now learned, has what they call slow allergies, and my younger son has what they call fast allergies. So fast allergies shows in a more advanced immune response. So I'm not quite sure it's better. I think it's better. A fast allergy is, if my son injects a peanut or a nut, he's going to be anaphylactic. If he drinks dairy or has sesame or has a pea or a lentil, he's going to vomit right away. So he has an immediate reaction to the foods that he eats. He shows on blood work. He shows on rash testing that he's allergic to these items. My older son developed something that's here called eosinophilic esophagitis. And how we discovered this is he had tested, same as my other son, for a variety of different foods, but didn't test positive for all the things that my younger son tested positive for in blood work. And he developed something where his esophagus basically closed up, and for a period of time, like a 24-hour span, it had swelled up so much that he couldn't swallow anything, not even water. He would vomit it right back up, almost like there was a trampoline in his esophagus. So, of course, we rushed him to the hospital, and after about 12 hours of them not knowing what was wrong with him, we requested an endoscopy so that they could look down and scope him. And when they did that, they discovered that the eosinophils, so eosinophils are the white blood cells, the good guys, his esophagus had swelled up so much that it sort of sent like a call out to the eosinophils to come to the esophagus to help reduce the inflammation. But once the eosinophils went into his esophagus, they got trapped. And that's what happens with eosinophilic esophagitis. The eosinophils take up so much space in the esophagus that there's no space for food or water or anything to go down. So to be healed, he had to go on steroids and an antacid, but we also had to remove a whole host of food. And we discovered that he was also allergic to a lot of the same things my other son was allergic to, but he didn't test positive. So he was more similar to me in that he had these low-lying sensitivity symptoms. So even though he wasn't vomiting immediately from milk, milk was causing an ongoing inflammation in his body, and it was slowly causing his gut and ultimately his esophagus to have a problem. I'm so grateful that we discovered that at 13, as opposed to where I got to, which was not until my 40s, that I really understood that I had a dairy intolerance, that I really, that the thick feeling I felt on my tongue was probably not right, or the kind of queasy stomach I had was probably not right, when I was having the different foods. The challenge with food sensitivities is that it's hard to detect. So over the last few years, I've gotten into kinesiology and muscle testing, because that's another way to detect people if they have food issues. So I just worked with a couple of clients this week, one actually with her daughter, because we were able to identify differences of food issues that the mom has and the daughter have, because they were starting to see personality changes and felt that they were food related. So the whole muscle testing thing, what's so fascinating about it is that it can detect. So when I muscle test, for example, my older son, he shows that he has a dairy intolerance, yet with blood work he doesn't. So it's just another way to sort of look at your body, because what ends up happening is when you eat, as it says here, your body breaks down the protein. There's sort of a normal pathway that the food takes. When you have a sensitivity, it creates an inflammation, and it starts to be this sort of stretching, this rubber band, where, as you can see in the picture here, the cells start to separate, so foods start to kind of drop down below here and go into the bloodstream and not the normal cycle that you want it to. So when good foods slip through, you don't actually break them down right, and your body sort of starts to attack itself. So the key is identifying the foods that are causing you some sensitivities potentially, and then removing them from your diet for a period of time, and then slowly reintroducing them, because you'll become more aware of how those foods make you feel. So an overworked immune system can actually cause all these different issues: leaky gut syndrome, weight gain, irritable bowel syndrome, creates more food sensitivities. You can develop antibodies against good foods, which is not a good thing. Arthritis, which, for example, so for those of you that might have arthritis, nightshade vegetables, so tomatoes, potatoes, eggplant, those are foods that have what they call alkaloids in them. And alkaloids are more inflammatory. So for people that have joint pain and arthritis, one of the quickest things is to not be taking the nightshades. Autoimmune issues. So for people like me, there's a lot of different foods like with sulfur. So eggs and red wine don't tend to be good for people with autoimmune conditions. So looking at your food sensitivities that way. A lot of times people who have autoimmune conditions can't methylate properly. So getting a B vitamin in an active form becomes important, because you might not be able to convert the vitamin. And you might have an impaired immune function. So where do you start? Because at least for me, I find it's all a little bit overwhelming. So what you'll see here is a picture of clean villi, and these are the finger-like creatures that are in your small intestine, and these are skanky, disgusting villi, which hopefully none of yours look like. But so how do we sort of help people heal? So as it relates to the program that we teach, I'll give a sense of it too, but no matter who you are, these are all things you can do even on your own. So the first thing is to detect. So I sort of give the analogy if you're a boxer and you're being beaten up in the ring, obviously the first thing you can do to help yourself is stop, getting beaten up. So get the person to stop punching you. That's sort of the, detection and the elimination. So the detection would be like, duh, somebody's hitting me. This is not a good idea. Eliminating it, get that person to stop hitting me. And then the repair, I might have to go to physical therapy. I might have to, be bandaged up. I might have to do something to repair the damage that I've done. So when it comes to food, the first thing we want to do is kind of, detect and figure out what are we eating. So we want to make healthy food choices. We obviously want to have some exercise. We want to try to minimize our medicines. I can email out to those of you that I have your email addresses, and for some of you, you probably already have this document and can invite and send it to your guests. But a great document about different medicines and how they gobble up the different nutrients that are in our bodies. So many people we know are on antidepressants or anti-inflammatories or blood pressure or cholesterol meds, and they do good things for the things that you're taking them for, but they also impact basic vitamins and nutrients in our body. One of the biggest things we need to do is detoxify your liver. So sugary and fatty foods cause fat to build up in this liver, which decreases our ability to actually metabolize them and break down fat. The more toxins we take in, the harder the liver obviously has to work. Disease occurs when the liver can no longer keep up. Okay, so think of alcoholism. The liver, has just shut down, and can't handle doing any kind of healthy metabolism. So the best analogy I can give you, if you go back to that sort of bagel analogy I was giving before, the where you're mixing flour with water, you basically get like paste when you put those two together. So when you eat food or take an antibiotic or a toxin or whatever you do, the first stop is to get into the villi to absorb the good, the bad, the ugly, whatever you've ingested, that has to be absorbed there. From there, it goes into the small intestine and into the bloodstream. So if you've got something like the metaphorical bagel constantly gunking up the villi, now all of a sudden the villi can't absorb good nutrients. So this is where nutritionists will say you're eating a dead food, because not only is it bringing you no nutrient value, it's also robbing your body of nutrient value. So what we really want to do is cleanse out the villi. We want to get all that gunk out so that we can put good, beautiful new nutrients on top. So some things that I recommend are to start with some kind of a detox. It's great to do this with a coach so that you have, some kind of direction. I know obviously Cindy has the class going on starting next week. So Maureen and Margaret, I think you guys are joining that, so Cindy will be able to guide you through that. A few of us have different other classes that are going on, as well as online detox and like a 3-week program online to sort of guide people. So by all means, ask the person who brought you on here about some kind of guided support for this. But in a good detox, you're going to be eating food. You shouldn't, I don't think, just be having a detox where you're just drinking shakes. Proteins and vegetables are so key. The detoxes that we do, we tend not to put protein in the first week, but we add it in the subsequent week because we try to stick to both fruits and veggies during the detox week. Fermented foods overall help with detox. Nuts and seeds are good. Good fats like avocados and coconut and water and kombucha teas. Those are all good in general for like a lifelong of detoxing. When we do the program, we concentrate it for 1 week where it's mostly fruits and vegetables and minimal fats, but we customize it to meet everybody's needs. So if you feel you need to add a protein because you're not feeling mentally strong, or you feel like you're going to the bathroom too much, maybe you need a fat to sort of help you out, or you're not going to the bathroom enough, you need to drink some more water. So your coach will really work with you to help you manage that. Of all the things we want you to eliminate during the detox week, it's mostly gluten, dairy or grains, dairy, the nightshade vegetables like I talked about, beans, legumes, and sugar and sweeteners. So again, the coach will walk you through this. Some people take supportive products to help with the detox. You have to sort of look at who you are and where you are in your health journal and how healthy eating you are as you got to this place that you're starting. One of my favorite products actually is this product here. It's a NutriClean product. And one thing that we do is a few of us, I've worked now with so many different nutrients over the years, so like a lot of my clients just come to me asking really for the things that I recommend. I actually have a client who did this detox in September, and she's actually doing it again now because she loves the way that this product makes her feel. What's in it is a fiber powder, which has good soluble and insoluble fiber and good probiotics. And it has a liver cleanse capsule that helps clean out your liver a little bit, and then it has a release tablet to help your colon a little bit, but it's not a diuretic, which I think is why so many people like it. It does help you go to the bathroom. It's not that you won't, but it's helping do so many other good things, and it's not intended to leave you in the bathroom all day. Some people just looking for something milder, aloe juice is a great healer for your digestive tract, for IBS, if you're someone who suffers from reflux. If you're someone who just has a sour stomach often. These are digestive enzymes, so enzymes are pretty powerful. So just to give you a sense, I was doing food sensitivity testing yesterday, and the woman that I was doing was showing a variety of different sensitivities to some different berries, as well as a few different vegetables and some nuts. And what was fascinating about it was that all the things that sort of revealed were things that she had started to kind of consciously remove from her diet. So that was sort of fascinating to me. But the other thing was that if I put digestive enzymes in one of her hands, she felt strong. And through the way that we would do the testing, it almost showed that there was no weakness for that food. So what digestive enzymes do is they provide our body with the enzymes we need to help break down the foods. And then these are probiotics, which are obviously all good to help our bodies so that we can get strong and have like a clean, good gut. Think of all the different antibiotics you might be taking. They do obviously good things, but they also kill the good bacteria in our body. So we want to have good bacteria as well. So having probiotics helps with that. So from the detox, this is, kind of saying a little bit about the TLS program that we teach. But again, it's based on eating low glycemic index, which means it's all about balancing your blood sugar level. And when you balance your blood sugar level, you're all about being in what we call fat burning mode as opposed to fat storage mode. It's really superior for weight loss because of that. It's not just about losing the pounds, it's about losing your inches. And really what I've seen through this program is there's three ways that we measure people's weight or how they look. Certainly one is weight, one is body fat, and one is inches. But you can actually lose up to 15 inches before you've even lost a pound. And most of us focus our weight or how we look or how confident we feel based on the scale. And it's just it just doesn't tell the whole picture. So I could take 5 women that I'm coaching who are all 5'5" and all weigh 150 pounds, and they're all going to look completely different. Their body types are going to be different. Their health is going to be different. But what I find with this program, and this is an internationally run program, so it's not something, I've just invented, but eating glycemic has obviously been around for a while. It's, more Mediterranean than it is anything else. South Beach is glycemic just without kind of a system in place. But when you're eating something, when you're losing weight via eating glycemic, where you're actually burning fat, you're changing your body composition. So maybe you'll just lose 20 pounds, but you might actually lose 6 or 8 inches in your waist. So what I see with a lot of my clients is their bodies change so much. I know one of my co-teachers, Ellen, is on the call, and some of her before and after pictures of her clients, it's not about that they lost 100 pounds, but you'd almost think they did because all of their belly fat is gone, and they just look so different. And that's when you're starting to eat for health. This is not a not eating program. If anything, I think most of my clients cannot eat enough according to the plan. So this is really about eating healthy. It supports all the serious health risks, diabetes, cardiovascular disease. It's incredible for healing GI issues. It's one of the most basic things to help people who have reflux and IBS or skin issues. Helps people reduce their medications. I have a client right now who is the one actually who I said is doing the detox again because she's had neuropathy for 3 years in her feet and can't get over that since she did the detox in September. Her neuropathy has been gone. Support behavior modification. So we're providing people with menu plans and recipe ideas and food lists and all of that, and supportive group sessions or one-on-one. And the goal, again, is to repair and increase your metabolism, put you in fat burning mode versus fat storage mode. We've customized nutraceuticals for those who need it. And ideally, we're just looking to support a healthy metabolism. So if that's something you're interested in, certainly talk with the person who invited you on this call. It's a really great program. I love this quote. I don't know how many of you guys know Mark Hyman, but he's, I think, one of the premier doctors right now who's leading the charge against Monsanto and other companies that are really kind of killing us. But he says, does everyone need supplements? If you eat wild, fresh, organic, local, non-genetically modified food grown in virgin mineral and nutrient-rich soils that has not been transported across vast distances and stored for months before being eaten, if you work and live outside, I think you get the point. Fresh, unpolluted air, drink only pure, clean water. You're free from chronic stressors, then maybe you don't need supplements. And I think this is sort of where I've come from because I have such little faith that the foods that I eat, even when I choose good foods, that they actually have the nutrients in them, that I've just seen that if I can get a balance somehow of the key nutrients, that I definitely feel better. But there's a challenge of what to consider because there's so many, honestly, crappy supplements that are out there. The nature of pills, or companies that spend most of their money on the packaging and the advertising, quite honestly, if you see it on TV, it's cost thousands and thousands of dollars to get there. That money has not been put into the manufacturing of getting the highest quality nutraceutical. Inside, the nature of making a pill is that it has binders and coatings and fillers, bulk fillers like talc and starch and sawdust and sand and partially hydrogenated oils and dyes, and your body has to figure out how to get rid of all of that. Most people take a low quality that has, no bioavailability. They're going to Costco or CVS and buying, what we would call veterinary grade vitamins because they've seen the commercial or because they're cheap. And I don't think higher quality supplements necessarily have to be expensive. There are good ones out there, but you want to make sure what you're having is absorbable. And I've always sort of told my clients they're better off taking a higher quality supplement every other day or every third day or even every fourth day than taking a crappy supplement and trying to figure out how to get your body to not only get the nutrients out of it, but break it down and then filter out all the toxins. So just for example, here's the label of the Flintstones chewable and Centrum. Actually, here's the Flintstones chewable. So in the Centrum, #1 vitamin sold, you've got blue number dye number 2, you've got aluminum, you've got red dye number 40, you've got yellow dye number 6, talc, titanium dioxide, that's for sunscreen. That's supposed to ingest that. Hydrogenated palm oil. In Flintstones, we have another hydrogenated product. You have aspartame, that's great, and then more dyes, okay? There's no nutrients in here, okay? It may say that it has more vitamin D, but you're not really getting anything out of that. And my other favorite is Viactive. Women need calcium. We know that calcium is the hardest mineral to absorb, so people don't want to take the big caltrate, so they take Viactive. And this is just candy. Calcium carbonate is not the most active form of calcium. You need other calcium salts in order to break that down. Look at the first 5 ingredients: corn syrup, sugar, hydrogenated coconut oil, corn syrup. I could keep going. Sweetened condensed milk, glycerin. I mean, it's crazy. And the caramel, equally has stuff. So these are candy, not really a supplement. When you take a pill, it has to get through your body. But here's an example of 3 days of a pill getting through someone's body. Nurses call these bedpan bullets. So sometimes they come out of people that have compromised digestive tracts with the label intact. Supposedly, Centrum Silver is the #1 thing found in the New York City sewage system, label intact. Now, this isn't going to be everybody, but if you have any kind of compromised digestive tract, if you've had, gastric bypass, you cannot take pills. You can't break them down. So the thing that was an eye-opener for me was that I had worked with someone who did IV drips, and IV drips are the most efficient way of getting a nutrient into your body because it's getting right into your bloodstream. Taking something isotonically is the next best thing. So iso means same, tonic means pressure, and it's a powder you mix with water and you drink it. And when you drink it, it's more absorbable in your body. It's pH balanced with your blood and your saliva and your tears, so it absorbs immediately into your bloodstream and goes to work. So you're able to absorb within 5 to 15 minutes versus a normal pill, which might have 40 minutes, in which case your body has to figure out a way to break that down. So some of the things that I recommend are isotonic products just because people can actually absorb and utilize them. And while I still don't think people take a multivitamin and are like, woo, I took a multivitamin, I feel great, when you take something like calcium or you take magnesium or you take vitamin C or you take vitamin D or a B complex, some nutrients or digestive enzymes, when you take them, you feel their impact pretty immediately and you can really see a change. So just talking about a handful of things that I recommend. One thing is OPCs. So what are OPCs? So OPCs are what we call bioflavonoids and pycnogenols. Okay, what they are the most widely studied antioxidants. So antioxidants are like vitamin C, vitamin E, beta-carotene. And what antioxidants basically do is they help with over 60 different degenerative diseases because what they do is they fight free radical damage. So when we breathe in oxygen. Oxygen goes into our body and causes oxidative stress. It is the process of aging. If you think about rust on a car, oxygen causes rust on a car. If you slice open an apple and it browns, that's oxidation. In and of itself, oxidation is not a problem. It's just that we're breathing in so much crap now, from the air that we breathe and everything, that our bodies are being bombarded. And what happens when you have oxidation is it creates something called a free radical. And a free radical is a renegade cell in your body. We have paired chained electrons. And a free radical is like one that left the chain and creates a cascading effect of unpaired electrons. And what that does is cause inflammation, and it causes over 60 known degenerative diseases. And what OPCs do, they're like what I would call super Pac-Men. They go in your body and they gobble up the free radicals. They cycle through your body every 72 hours, which is why it's important to keep taking them. But OPCs are a food supplement. They're actually not a vitamin. So you can megadose on them. So for example, after I'd had the radiation and I wanted to get pregnant, my friend April was like, oh my God, you've had radiation. You need to get rid of all that free radical stuff. You need to be taking OPCs. So similarly, friends of mine that have gone through chemo, they don't need the OPC during the chemo necessarily, but following the chemo, when you want to build your immune system back up and flush out all those free radicals, OPCs become really important. So OPC3 is actually the largest selling OPC worldwide. And if you want to learn about OPCs in general, I recommend going to www.pignogenal.com, and you can read all the different studies about it. But what OPC3 is specifically is it's three of the most highly potable bioflavonoids. So it's red wine and grapeseed extract, which help with cholesterol and cardiovascular issues. So we've done, this company has done double-blind placebo studies showing how it lowers C-reactive protein levels, which are your inflammatory markers, how it's reduced cardiac wall, the oxidative stress sort of on your heart to help reduce that as well. Pine bark extract helps with the normal dilation of blood vessels, so it helps create healthy blood pressure, healthy cholesterol. And then citrus extract, which helps with strengthen your capillaries and has anti-inflammatory properties. It's a crazy product. For this company, OPC3 does almost $4 million a week solely on word of mouth, which I only mention because it's a down economy. So I've actually had a client that's been buying OPC3 for over 15 years. She has MS, and it just helps with her pain and suffering. You know, it helps build her immune system. So allergies, my kids have been taking, actually these are great for kids too because you can drink them. They also come in chews now, but OPCs help build your immune system. They will have antihistamine properties, so help people who have allergies, especially, you know, as March comes around and, you know, April comes around, really helpful with that as well. So that's a really great nutrient to get more information on, whether you go to pignogenal.com or the person actually who called you on here, they might be able to research some information for you on it. I think everybody needs a multivitamin. 100%, the isotonic one gives you 100% of the recommended daily. It's important to help convert food into energy, which is help creating your metabolism. If you have thyroid issues, it's even more important because you want to help create a healthy TSH. And T3 and T4, you need it for metabolic functioning. You need it ultimately for your cardiovascular and your blood pressure. So this gives you a sense comparing isotonic to two main brands. So Kirkland to me would be like veterinary grade. That's obviously the Costco brand. And then standard process, which would be more pharmaceutical grade, which I would call isotonic, meaning that health professionals see it as high quality. So just to give you a sense, so these both come in a tablet. This comes in a powder. These two have binders, you know, which your body is not good. Binders are not good. Isotonic does not. And then if you look at just about every item, the isotonic actually has more nutrients than the other two. So again, assuming that maybe everything is not 100% of a label claim, you want as much as you can in it. The other thing I recommend is calcium. So as I was saying before, calcium is the hardest nutrient mineral to absorb. What's great, what I like about this calcium and what's important about calcium in general is that it supports your skeletal health, your heart muscle, your immune system. If you're someone who doesn't sleep well, it's great to take at night. It's important for muscle development, enzyme and hormone regulation, so really important for women. It needs to have vitamin D and magnesium to be absorbed. So a lot of times when people say, oh, I don't need vitamin D, you know, I'm getting it through my calcium, it depends on how much vitamin D you have, but the vitamin D connected to the calcium is really about transporting the calcium. You still may need additional D to help boost your vitamin D levels. When you do take calcium, it saturates at 400 milligrams, so it often needs to be taken multiple times a day. What I like about this calcium is that there's 5 different calcium salts. It's not just calcium carbonate, and it has something in it called malic acid, which does something called ionizing the calcium carbonate, which makes it more absorbable in your body, because that's really the hardest thing about calcium, is that it's hard to absorb and then utilize. Vitamin D, I was talking about before, another thing that I find so many people need, especially now in winter where we're not getting as much sunlight, but it promotes normal bone mineral density. It's important for your arteries and your overall cardiovascular health and your blood vessels and pressure. And deficiencies in vitamin D are linked to so many big things: cancer, heart disease, depression, weight gain. And then the final thing that I always talk about is B complexes. This was a big thing for me because I never understood what metabolically active forms meant. And when I started to learn that because of the autoimmune conditions I have, and supposedly a lot of women who, women in general lose their B vitamins, we lose it through exercise. Coffee depletes it when you freeze meat, you lose it. But most women cannot convert B vitamins from the non-active form to the active form. So if you currently have a B vitamin, if you go to the label where it says folic acid or B12, it might say cyclocobalamin, C-Y-C-L-O cobalamin, versus methylcobalamin. And what you want is the methyl form, because that means it's already been methylated and your body doesn't need to break it down. So when I was saying, for me, like a lot of people who have autoimmune conditions, we don't methylate properly. We need more antioxidants in our body because our body does not filter things very well. So having a B complex that is methylated already becomes key. And B vitamins play a critical role in everything that has to do with metabolism at the cellular level. It's responsible for hundreds of biochemical reactions. For my friends that have had babies that suffer, from postpartum, B vitamins, omegas make such a big difference for people with depression and fatigue. People who are vegans, who have Crohn's, who have celiac, all these things are really important to have B vitamins. So don't, underestimate the importance of the B vitamins. So one of the things that I often recommend, not a requirement, however you get it, I mean, obviously just sort of I find my clients are sort of asking me what I recommend, is that the four main things that I do recommend, taking the vitamin D out of it though, but the OPC, which is the antioxidant, the B, the multi, and the calcium, can all be bought like together in a travel packet. So like I'm going to Miami next week, and it's great because I can just bring these with me, put them in a drink, and drink them. My kids take them in the morning. But what's nice is all the other ones, I take additional magnesium because I often get leg cramping. I take vitamin C in the winter, and vitamin D, I'm able to add that to the cocktail. So it's a very inexpensive way to get good quality nutrients. And even if I take them every other day or every third day to help spread them out, I'm still able to absorb them because they're in an isotonic form. So I'm going to unmute everybody. If anybody has any questions, I'm happy to answer them. I know we might get an echo now. But I was just sort of trying to give everyone an overview. I can also email some of the books that I recommend. Include Grain Brain, which is a great book that talks about how grains impact your brain and kind of sort of destroy your brain. Skinny Bitch was one of them. The Gluten Connection is another good one. And Clean Gut.
It's very hard to hear you.
Does anybody have any questions?
Can you repeat what you just said, please?
Oh, the books? Sure. Brain Brain, Skinny Bitch, just like saying that. The Gluten Connection, Clean Gut, and actually one other good one is the Blood Glucose Solution. I think that one's by Dr. Mark Hyman, Hyman. I feel what's nice about all those books is the Clean Gut's really important to talk about how important getting your gut in good shape is in order to start, a path towards getting healthy. Grain Brain is will just give you pause about how much grains you're eating and how much they're impacting the strength of your brain, Alzheimer's, different neurological issues. So, for example, kids that might have neurological issues. Same with the Gluten Connection. And Skinny Bitch will just freak you out about all food, which is not totally my intent. You have to find some balance, I think, after you read that, because you might want to be macrobiotic. But it does give you pause about what's going on in our food industry.
Hey.
Anybody else have any questions? Okay, well, thank you very much for attending. I really appreciate it. If you do have any questions, definitely feel free to follow up with the person who invited you on the call, and they can certainly reach out to me. I'm happy to email. My email is jessmichaud@verizon.net. I'm writing it down here, so if anybody wants to email me any questions, happy to answer them.
Thank
Thank you
you.
so much for taking the time today, and I hope everyone is safe tomorrow with the snow.
Thank you, Jess. Great job.
Okay. Bye.
Thank you.